Dust swirled around the wooden gallows as the first rays of dawn broke over the frontier town. Standing tall, despite his bound hands, the Apache warrior named Nakohi showed no fear as the noose awaited. The crowd gathered to witness justice for murders he didn't commit. His request seemed simple enough: to see his faithful mare one last time before meeting the Great Spirit. The judge nodded reluctantly. As the horse approached, she nudged something hidden at her master's feet. A leather pouch containing undeniable proof of his innocence. What secrets did this loyal creature carry that could change everything? What ancient bond between man and horse would rewrite a death sentence in the unforgiving West? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The cracked leather of Sarah Williams' water pouch had been patched. So many times it resembled a quilt of desperation. Before dawn painted the Arizona Territory sky, she was already awake, shoulders aching from yesterday's burden. 6 miles to Copper Creek and back, a journey she'd made every day since Robert died in the mine collapse 18 months ago. One more day, she whispered to herself, a mantra that had carried her through months of grief and hardship. The small homestead Robert had been so proud of was withering, much like her hopes of keeping it. Sarah adjusted her faded bonnet against the rising sun. At 32, her once soft hands had grown calloused, her fair skin weathered by the unforgiving desert. The 2 empty buckets swung at her sides as she trudged the familiar path through scrubland. From the shadow of a mesa, dark eyes watched her progress. Nakohi had observed the white woman's daily struggle for many moons now. The Apache warrior respected determination, even in a settler. His people called her "woman who carries water," a simple description that held admiration in its simplicity. In Copper Springs, the morning bustle had begun. As Sarah reached the town's edge, merchants arranged wares, and the saloon was being swept clean of last night's indiscretions. Sarah kept her eyes down, avoiding the stares. Since refusing Blackwood's offer to buy her land, the townsfolk had grown colder. "Mornin', Widow Williams," called Mr. Peterson from the general store. Blackwood raised his offer yet again. Mighty generous of him, considering. Sarah tightened her grip on the bucket handles. "My land's not for sale, Mr. Peterson. Not to Blackwood. Not to anyone." Peterson shook his head. "Stubborn as your husband was, look where that got him." The words stung like a whip. Sarah bit back tears as she continued toward the creek. The banker had made it clear, 3 more weeks to pay her debt or lose everything. At the creek, Sarah knelt and began filling her buckets. The weight of them, when full, made her wince in anticipation. As she struggled to lift the first one, a commotion erupted nearby. "Dirty Apache, get away from our town!" A group of boys were throwing rocks at a small figure, an Apache child of perhaps 7 years who had ventured too close to the creek. Without thinking, Sarah dropped her bucket. "Stop that this instant!" Her voice carried unexpected authority, freezing the boys mid-throw. "Ma says they're savages," one boy protested. "Says they'll steal children. And you're proving to be such civilized young men?" Sarah positioned herself between them and the child. "Go on, before I speak with your mothers about this behavior." The boys scattered, leaving Sarah alone with the wide-eyed Apache child. She knelt slowly, trying to appear non-threatening. "Are you hurt?" she asked gently, knowing the child probably didn't understand English. The boy backed away, then turned and ran toward the hills. Sarah sighed, returning to her buckets. As she struggled to lift them, she felt a crawling sensation between her shoulders, the feeling of being watched. From his position, Nakohi had witnessed everything. The woman's defense of the child, his sister's son, shifted something in his assessment. Perhaps not all white settlers were cut from Blackwood's cruel cloth. As Sarah began her long journey home, the water sloshing and spilling with each step, she didn't notice the silent figure that paralleled her path, keeping watch from a respectful distance, nor could she know how their paths would soon intersect. changing everything she understood about survival in this harsh, beautiful land. "Mrs. Williams!" The sheriff's voice stopped her at the edge of town. A word. Sheriff Jenkins was a fair man, unlike many. "I saw what you did for that Indian boy. Kind, but foolish. There's talk of Apache raids on settlements north of here. Best keep your distance from their kind." Sarah shifted the heavy buckets. "That kind was a child, Sheriff. I'd do the same for any child, yours included." Jenkins removed his hat, revealing concern in his weathered face. "Blackwood's got the town council in his pocket. Makes my job harder when good folks like you make enemies of powerful men." "I'm not looking for enemies," Sarah replied, "just trying to keep what's mine. Be careful is all I'm saying." He replaced his hat. "That land you're holding on to has Blackwood mighty interested. Man like that doesn't take no for an answer for long." As Sarah continued home, the weight of the water seemed lighter than the burden of his warning. The midday sun beat down without mercy as Sarah struggled up the rocky path toward home. Her cotton dress clung to her back, soaked with sweat and spilled water. The silver locket containing Robert's portrait hung heavy around her neck, a constant reminder of promises made and a future now vanished. "Just a little further," she gasped, adjusting her grip on the buckets. The water inside had diminished by half, sacrificed to the thirsty ground with each labored step. Today was worse than most. 3 days without proper food had weakened her more than she cared to admit. The world tilted suddenly. Sarah blinked against black spots dancing across her vision. The bucket slipped from her grasp as her knees buckled beneath her. The precious water soaked into the parched earth as consciousness fled. Nakohi had been watching from the ridgeline, evaluating the determination of this solitary woman. When she collapsed, he hesitated only briefly before descending. The territorial militia had standing orders to shoot Apache on sight, but he would not leave her to the buzzards already circling overhead. He approached cautiously, scanning for threats. Finding none, he knelt beside her still form. Her pulse fluttered beneath his fingers like a trapped hummingbird. Heat sickness. He'd seen it claim many lives, including his youngest brother, during a drought 3 summers past. With practiced efficiency, Nakohi lifted Sarah as if she weighed nothing. His decision was made. He would take her to Natahane, the tribe's healer. The old woman's knowledge of desert plants had saved many from the sun's wrath. When Sarah regained consciousness, the world was cast in the amber glow of firelight. Above her, not the familiar beams of her cabin, but a conical structure of wooden poles covered with animal hides. The smell of unfamiliar herbs and smoke filled her nostrils. Panic surged through her body. "Be still, water woman," came a voice in heavily accented English. An elderly Apache woman with deep-set eyes and silver-streaked hair held a clay cup to Sarah's lips. "Drink." Sarah tried to refuse, but her parched body betrayed her caution. The bitter liquid soothed her raw throat. "Where am I?" she managed, voice cracking. "You are among the ND," came another voice, deeper and more familiar with English. Nakohi entered the lodge, ducking beneath the low entrance. "What you call Apache?" Recognition dawned slowly in Sarah's mind. She had glimpsed this man before, watching from hillsides, a silent shadow that towered over other men. "You were following me," she accused weakly, a slight nod. "You fell, the sun would have claimed you." The old woman, Natahan, Sarah would later learn, pressed cool cloths to her forehead and neck, speaking rapidly in Apache. Nakohi responded, his voice respectful. "She says your spirit is strong, but your body weak," he translated. "You push yourself too hard with no one to help." Sarah clutched Robert's locket reflexively. "I manage." "Poorly," Nakohi replied without malice. "Your water is gone. Your strength is gone. Tomorrow you will try again and maybe die." The bluntness of his assessment struck Sarah like a physical blow. Outside the lodge, she could hear voices, children laughing, life continuing. Not the savage camp of nightmarish tales told in town, but a community. "Why help me?" she asked. "Your people have no reason to show kindness to mine." Nakohi's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his dark eyes. "I have watched you. You defend a child not your own. You work until you fall. You refuse to surrender what is yours." He paused. "These things the Apache understand." Sarah tried to sit up, wincing at the pounding in her head. "I should return home. My animals are cared for," Nakohi interrupted. "My sister's son, the boy you protected, he and others tend your goats and chickens." The realization that Apache had been to her homestead should have frightened her. Instead, an unexpected relief washed over her. For months, she had carried her burdens alone, too proud to accept charity, too stubborn to admit defeat. "Rest," Nakohi commanded softly. "When the sun rises, I will take you home." True to his word, Nakohi returned Sarah to her homestead as dawn painted the eastern sky. The journey had been made in companionable silence, Sarah riding behind him on his mare, arms hesitantly circling his waist for balance. Her initial fear had given way to cautious trust, a rare commodity in the territory. "You're well?" Nakohi said, dismounting with fluid grace before helping her down. He gestured to the dry stone structure Robert had begun digging before his death. "It is good, but wrong place." Sarah brushed dust from her skirt. "Robert chose that spot, said it was best. White men dig where it is easy, not where water waits." There was no judgment in his tone, merely observation. "I can show you better place." For 3 days, Sarah didn't see Nakohi, though evidence of his passing remained. A brace of rabbits left by her door, tracks around the property perimeter. On the 4th morning, he appeared as she fed her chickens, materializing from the landscape as if part of it. "Water sleeps here," he announced without preamble, stamping his foot on a patch of ground 15 yards from her original well. "Dig here." Sarah squinted skeptically. "How can you be certain?" "Plants tell stories to those who listen." He indicated seemingly random growth patterns invisible to her untrained eye. "This place, water, is closer to sky." Together, they began work. On the new well, Sarah provided the tools, Nakohi the knowledge. By midday, moisture darkened the soil, far sooner than she expected. By week's end, they had struck water at half the depth of Robert's abandoned attempt. "I don't know how to thank you," Sarah said as they rested in the shade of her porch, sharing a meal of cornbread and rabbit stew. Nakohi reached into a small pouch at his waist and withdrew a single eagle feather. "For courage," he explained, offering it to her. "To wear or keep safe. Eagle watches over those who stand alone but do not break." Sarah accepted the gift with appropriate solemnity. "Will you teach me more? About finding water? About your ways?" His expression remained unchanged, but something in his eyes lightened. "The only way is to listen before speaking, watch before moving, learn before teaching." "I'm a quick study," Sarah replied, with the first genuine smile in months. As summer's heat intensified, an unlikely partnership formed. Nakohi taught Sarah to collect morning dew with specially arranged stones, to find edible plants where others saw only weeds, to conserve water through careful irrigation channels. In return, Sarah shared her knowledge of crop rotation, seed preservation, and animal husbandry, skills her Pennsylvania farming family had passed down for generations, the town noticed. Whispers followed Sarah when she visited Copper Springs for supplies. "Consorting with savages," Mrs. Blackwood hissed in the general store, loud enough for all to hear. Sheriff Jenkins pulled Sarah aside outside the trading post. "You're causing talk, Mrs. Williams. Blackwood's using it against you, saying you've gone native." "I'm surviving, Sheriff," Sarah replied, which seems to bother Mr. Blackwood more than it should. "He's petitioning the territorial governor about the Apache," Jenkins warned. "Claims they're threatening settlement. Your friendship with them isn't helping their case, or yours." That evening, Sarah shared the sheriff's warning with Nakohi as they reinforced her cabin's roof against the coming monsoon season. "Blackwood wants land that is not his," Nakohi said, his voice a low rumble like distant thunder. Land where? The mountain touches clouds, sacred land. What's so special about it? Stories say Great Spirit hid treasures in the mountain's heart. White men call it copper, silver, gold. He secured a wooden beam with practiced efficiency. My father's father's father hunted these valleys. We are the mountain's guardians, not its owners. Sarah understood then. Blackwood's interest in her modest homestead was merely a stepping stone to the Apache territory beyond. Her property was worthless without the water rights that came with it, water rights that controlled access to the mountains Nakohi's people protected. As summer yielded to autumn, Sarah's homestead transformed. The once parched garden now flourished with corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters, as Nakohi called them, planted in the Apache way. Her water-hauling days became a distant memory as the new well provided bounty even during dry spells. But now, Sarah insisted one evening as they sat by the fire. For weeks she'd been teaching Nakohi English letters, amazed at his quick mind. He traced the words in her Bible, one of the few books she owned, his calloused finger moving deliberately across the page. In the beginning, he read slowly, was the Word. Pride warmed Sarah's chest. Very good. Your God speaks with words. Nakohi observed. Ours speaks through wind, through mountains, through eagle's flight. These exchanges became precious to Sarah. Cultural bridges built one conversation at a time. She learned that the Apache were not one people, but many bands. That Nakohi's name meant brave one, given after he killed a mountain lion threatening their camp as a youth. He learned her father had been a school teacher, that she could cipher numbers faster than most men, that her laugh, rarely heard before, had the timbre of mourning doves at dusk. On the first frost morning, Natahan appeared at Sarah's door, bearing a small deerskin bundle. Medicine, the old woman explained in halting English she'd been practicing. For cold time. Inside were herbs, roots, and barks, with instructions for their use, a healing gift beyond price in the isolated territory. Sarah blinked back tears at the unexpected kindness. Thank you, she said, attempting the Apache phrase Nakohi had taught her. Natahane's weathered face creased in a smile. She reached out, touching the silver locket that never left Sarah's neck. Past, the healer said, tapping the locket. Then she touched Sarah's heart. Now, finally, she gestured toward the horizon. Future, all medicine. That evening, during the tribe's harvest ceremony to which Sarah had been invited, Nakohi sat beside her as flames leapt skyward. The rhythmic drums and chanting created a hypnotic atmosphere unlike any church service she'd attended. Your people accept me more readily than mine accept you, Sarah observed. Nakohi watched sparks spiral into the star-filled darkness. The ND judge by actions, not skin. You work hard. You respect our ways. You learn our language. He paused. Some still distrust, but they watch and wait. In town, they don't watch and wait. They've already decided. The following week proved her words prophetic. Sarah entered Copper Springs to sell surplus vegetables from her garden. The first time she'd had anything to trade in months. Instead of the usual cold shoulders, she faced open hostility. We don't want Indian-grown food, Peterson from the general store declared, refusing her carrots and onions. Outside the saloon, Morgan Blackwood himself intercepted her. Tall and imposing in his tailored suit, his smile never reached his eyes. Mrs. Williams, he removed his hat with exaggerated courtesy. I hear you've become quite the Indian princess. Sarah straightened her spine. I've become quite the successful farmer, Mr. Blackwood. Something that seems to trouble you. His smile tightened. What troubles me, madam, is good Christian folk. Fraternizing with savages makes people wonder where your loyalties lie. My loyalty is to my land and those who help me keep it, she replied evenly. Blackwood stepped closer, lowering his voice. I've increased my offer. $500. More than fair for a patch of dirt and a woman with a questionable reputation. The answer remains no. His facade cracked. "Don't be a fool. The territorial governor arrives next month. Changes are coming for your Apache friends. Best secure your future while you can." That night, Sarah recounted the confrontation to Nakohi as they reinforced her corral fence. "Blackwood speaks with forked tongue about governor," he said. "We have scouts watching wagon roads. No official comes." "Then why claim otherwise?" Nakohi's expression darkened. "To create fear, to make you sell, to make towns support his war against Apache." He hesitated before adding, "Tribe council meets tomorrow. You should come. Your voice needed." The tribal council met in a large lodge, adorned with symbols Sarah couldn't decipher. As the only white person present, she felt conspicuously out of place, until Nakohi motioned her to sit beside him in the circle of elders. Natahane nodded approvingly, but other faces remained impassive, withholding judgment. The council chief, a silver-haired man named Taklishim, spoke at length in Apache. Nakohi translated in hushed tones. 3 moons ago, miners came to Sacred Mountain. They searched for copper veins. We warned them away twice. 3rd time, shots fired. 1 young warrior wounded. More speakers followed, each recounting increasing encroachments on Apache lands. Sarah listened, understanding dawning. While she'd been building her friendship with Nakohi, tensions had been escalating throughout the territory. "Blackwood leads these miners?" Sarah asked when given opportunity to speak. Taklishim nodded solemnly. "White man with dead eyes. Offers trinkets for mountain access. When refused, he threatens. He's been trying to buy my land as well," Sarah explained. "Now I understand why. It's the water access to the mountains he truly wants." The council exchanged glances. Nakohi's expression remained stoic, but his eyes betrayed concern. "There is more," he translated, as a young warrior spoke rapidly. "Supply wagon for Copper Springs was attacked yesterday. Driver killed. They will blame Apache." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Were your people responsible?" "No," Taklishim answered directly in English, "but truth matters little to men like Blackwood." As if summoned by prophecy, gunshots echoed in the distance the following dawn. Sarah, who had stayed the night in a lodge offered by Natahane, emerged to find the camp in controlled chaos. Women gathering children, warriors collecting weapons. Militia comes. Nakohi appeared at her side, rifle in hand. "You must return home quickly." "I'll speak to them," Sarah insisted. "Tell them you weren't responsible." Nakohi's face hardened. "They will not listen to woman who lives with savages. Go home. Stay safe. I will come when I can." For 3 anxious days, Sarah waited at her homestead, jumping at every sound. Entree. The 4th morning, Sheriff Jenkins arrived, his expression grim. "Blackwood's foreman was found murdered last night," he announced without preamble. "Throat cut. Weapon left at scene. An Apache knife." "That doesn't mean—" "Course it doesn't," Jenkins interrupted. "Apache aren't fool enough to leave their distinctive weapons behind. But folks are riled up, especially after the wagon attack. Territorial militia's been called in." Sarah clutched the porch railing. "Who called them?" Blackwood wired the governor. "Directly. Colonel Hargrove and his men arrive tomorrow." Jenkins removed his hat. "Sarah, I've known you since you arrived with Robert. You're a good woman, but this friendship with the Apache, it's put you in a dangerous position." "The Apache didn't kill that foreman or attack that wagon," Sarah stated firmly. "This is Blackwood's creating incidents to justify seizing their land. Maybe so, but you try telling that to men who've lost kin to Indian raids elsewhere in the territory." Jenkins replaced his hat. "Hargrove has a reputation. They call him the Indian killer after the Navajo campaigns. He won't distinguish between peaceful Apache and raiders." After the sheriff departed, Sarah paced her cabin, indecision gnawing at her. At dusk, she made up her mind. Saddling her mare, she rode toward the Apache camp to warn Nakohi about the coming militia. She found the camp relocated deeper into the canyon, a defensive position. Sentries escorted her to Nakohi, who was in council with Taklishim and other warriors. "You should not have come," he said, though relief flickered across his features. "Not safe. The militia arrives tomorrow," Sarah explained breathlessly. "Led by Colonel Hargrove, a man known for brutality against natives." The name registered with the Apache leaders. Grim expressions were exchanged. "We know this man," Taklishim said. "His hands drip with Navajo blood." "Someone killed Blackwood's foreman," Sarah continued. "Left an Apache knife as evidence." Nakohi's jaw tightened. "Another false attack to blame on us." "The night the foreman died," Sarah asked carefully. "Where were you?" His eyes met hers, unflinching. "I was with you, fixing your roof against rain, until stars were high." The realization struck Sarah with physical force. Nakohi had an alibi, one she could provide. But would anyone in Copper Springs believe a word she said? Dawn broke with the thunder of hooves. From her cabin window, Sarah watched as 24 militia riders crested the hill, dust billowing behind them like storm clouds. At their head rode a tall figure in a campaign hat, Colonel Hargrove, she presumed, alongside Morgan Blackwood, whose satisfaction was visible even at a distance. The riders paused at her property line. Blackwood and the colonel approached alone, the latter dismounting with military precision despite his advancing years. His weathered face bore a scar from jaw to temple, his eyes the flat grey of winter skies. "Mrs. Williams," Blackwood called, with false cordiality. "Colonel Hargrove wishes to speak with you regarding your associations." Sarah stepped onto her porch, clutching her deed papers, the only protection she had. "Colonel, I presume you've come about the recent troubles." Hargrove's assessing gaze was colder than a mountain stream. "Ma'am, I understand you've been consorting with Apache, specifically a warrior called Nakohi." "I've been learning irrigation techniques from the local tribe," Sarah replied evenly. "Their knowledge has helped me make this land productive." "Your productive land sits on a vital access. Road to the hills beyond," Hargrove stated. "Hills now suspected of harboring hostile Indians responsible for 2 murders. "The Apache didn't commit those murders," Sarah countered. "In fact, Nakohi was here with me the night Blackwood's foreman was killed, repairing my roof." Blackwood's face darkened. "You expect us to take the word of an Indian sympathizer? Perhaps even an Indian lover?" The slur hung in the air like gun smoke. Sarah's cheeks burned, but she held her ground. "I expect you to investigate properly before condemning innocent people. The Apache have lived peacefully in these canyons for generations." "Peace is a luxury, Mrs. Williams," Hargrove replied, unmoved. "Security is a necessity. My orders are to remove the Apache threat and secure these lands for proper settlement." "By proper settlement, you mean Blackwood's mining operations?" Sarah challenged. A muscle twitched in Hargrove's scarred cheek. "I mean American progress, ma'am. Something your husband understood, God rest his soul. The mention of Robert from..." These men felt like desecration. Sarah clutched her deed tighter. "My husband believed in honest work and fair dealings, not theft disguised as progress." Hargrove remounted his horse. "We're moving against the Apache camp tomorrow at first light. As a courtesy to a widow, I'm advising you to reconsider your allegiances. These lands will be secured with or without your cooperation." As they rode away, Sarah waited only moments before saddling her mare. She had to warn Nakohi, regardless of the risk, but she arrived too late. From the ridge overlooking the canyon, she saw militia riders surrounding the Apache camp, rifles raised. Among the chaos, she spotted Nakohi being led away, hands bound. Behind his back, "No!" she whispered, heart constricting. A hand gripped her shoulder. Sarah turned to find Natahan, who had been gathering plants on the hillside. "They take him," the old woman said, her normally steady voice breaking. "Say he kill white man." "He didn't," Sarah insisted. "He was with me. Taklishim say, surrender better than bloodshed." Nakohi agree. Natahana's dark eyes held ancient sorrow. Now they take him to hang. Sarah raced her mare back to town, arriving as Nakohi was being led to the jailhouse. A crowd had gathered, faces twisted with the ugly anticipation of spectacle. "He's innocent!" Sarah shouted, dismounting, and pushing through onlookers. "I can prove it." Sheriff Jenkins intercepted her before she could reach Nakohi. "Not here, Sarah," he muttered, steering her aside. "Not like this. They can't just hang him without a trial," she insisted. "Judge Caldwell's been telegraphed. He'll arrive day after tomorrow." Jenkins looked troubled. "But Sarah, they found Nakohi's knife in the victim. Distinctive handle carving. Everyone knows it's his." "It was stolen or planted," Sarah argued. "He was with me that entire night." The sheriff's expression revealed his doubt. The word of a woman living alone, defending an Indian brave. That won't hold much water with a territorial court. Sarah stood straighter, determination hardening her resolve. "Then I'll need more evidence, won't I?" That night, defying warnings and common sense, Sarah returned to the murder scene, a clearing near Blackwood's mining office. The ground had been trampled by dozens of boots, but away from the main area, near a juniper thicket, she found what others had missed. A brass button from a militia uniform, partially covered by disturbed soil and bearing a distinctive eagle. Insignia. As she pocketed this small evidence, a twig snapped behind her. Sarah turned to find herself staring into the barrel of a rifle held by one of Hargrove's men. "Mrs. Williams," he drawled, "the colonel would like a word with you." The militia man escorted Sarah not to Hargrove as she feared, but to Sheriff Jenkins, who had been patrolling the area. "Found her snooping at the murder site," the soldier reported before departing. Jenkins looked at Sarah with exasperation. "You're determined to get yourself in trouble, aren't you?" Sarah revealed the brass button. "Militia issue. What would this be doing at a murder supposedly committed by Apache?" Jenkins examined it, frowning. "Could have been dropped any time during the investigation. Or during the murder," Sarah countered. "Sheriff, something isn't right." Hargrove arrived, too quickly after the foreman's death, almost as if he was already on his way. "Careful with accusations, Sarah," Jenkins warned, but pocketed the button. "Judge Caldwell arrives tomorrow. He's stern but fair. Save your evidence for him." Judge Hiram Caldwell proved to be a silver-haired man with spectacles and a reputation for by-the-book justice. The trial was set for the following morning in the hastily converted town hall. Every resident of Copper Springs crowded inside, with militiamen standing guard. The witness scroll, a ledger of testimonies, grew heavy with damning statements. Blackwood's remaining men testified to Nakohi's threatening behavior in past encounters. The town doctor confirmed the wounds matched an Apache blade. A tracker described finding Nakohi's distinctive moccasin prints near the scene. When Sarah's turn came, she approached the front, aware of hostile stares boring into her back. "Mrs. Williams," Judge Caldwell began, "you claim the accused was with you the entire night of the murder." "Yes, Your Honor. Nakohi was helping repair my roof until well past midnight." Prosecutor Reynolds, a thin man with Blackwood's backing, pounced. "And can anyone else corroborate this convenient alibi?" "No, sir. We were alone." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Mrs. Williams," Reynolds continued, his tone suggesting scandal, "what exactly is your relationship with the accused?" Sarah lifted her chin. "Nakohi taught me to survive in this territory when no one else would help. He showed me how to find water, grow crops, and protect my land." "That doesn't answer my question," Reynolds pressed. "Are you and this savage—" "Objection," came a surprising voice, Judge Caldwell himself. "The witness will be treated with respect, Counselor." Reynolds adjusted his approach. "Mrs. Williams, given your friendship with the accused, can you really be considered an impartial witness?" "I'm the only witness speaking the truth," Sarah replied firmly. When Nakohi took the stand, he maintained his dignity despite the chains binding his wrists. He spoke clearly in English, surprising many who expected a translator. "I did not kill. This man," he stated simply. "My knife was taken from my lodge 2 moons ago. I thought it lost during hunting." "Convenient," Reynolds remarked. "And where were you on the night in question?" "With Mrs. Williams, as she said, fixing her dwelling." "Against rain. And after that, did you go directly back to your camp?" A flicker of hesitation crossed Nakohi's face. "No, I tracked suspicious riders near our territory." Reynolds pounced. "So you admit you were out, armed, near the time of the murder?" "I was protecting my people from militia scouts," Nakohi replied evenly. "I did not approach the mining camp. The testimony that sealed Nakohi's fate came from Colonel Hargrove himself, who produced a sworn statement claiming his scouts had observed Nakohi near the mining office on the night in question." Throughout the proceedings, Sarah noted Judge Caldwell's thoughtful expression. Unlike the prosecutor or jury of townsmen, he seemed to weigh each word carefully, occasionally glancing between Nakohi and Blackwood with shrewd assessment. When the jury retired to deliberate, they returned in mere minutes. The foreman, Peterson, from the general store, could barely conceal his satisfaction. "We find the Indian Nakohi guilty of murder." The crowd erupted in approval. Judge Caldwell banged his gavel repeatedly for order. "Having found the defendant guilty," he announced, "I hereby sentence him to hang by the neck until dead. Execution to be carried out tomorrow at dawn." He paused, then added, "As is custom, the condemned may make one final request." Nakohi rose, chains rattling. "I wish to see my horse before I die," Caldwell nodded. "Granted, and may God have mercy on your soul." As Nakohi was led away, his eyes met Sarah's across the room. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Not farewell, but determination. Sarah clutched the silver locket at her throat, a plan already forming. Darkness fell over Copper Springs, bringing with it an uneasy quiet. While townsfolk celebrated the verdict in the saloon, Sarah slipped toward the livery stable where Nakohi's mare had been impounded. The militia guard dozed against a post, rifle across his lap, whiskey bottle at his feet. Inside, the mare, a sleek pinto Nakohi called Escalating or Stormwind, paced restlessly. The horse recognized Sarah immediately, nickering softly as she approached. "Easy, girl," Sarah whispered, stroking the animal's muzzle. "I need your help." Something about the horse's behavior struck Sarah as odd. Escalating kept nudging her toward. The saddle blanket folded in the corner. Following the animal's prompting, Sarah examined the blanket, finding a small hidden pocket sewn into its underside. Inside was a leather pouch, meticulously crafted and adorned with protective symbols. Heart. Racing, Sarah opened it. The contents made her gasp. A scalp lock with a distinctive white streak, identical to one she'd seen on Blackwood's right-hand man, Davis. Alongside it lay a tarnished silver pocket watch Sarah recognized as belonging to the murdered wagon. Driver. These weren't trophies. They were evidence collected by Nakohi during his tracking. "He knew," Sarah murmured. "He was gathering proof." A sound at the stable door made her quickly conceal the pouch in her dress. Sheriff Jenkins entered, eyebrows rising at her presence. "Thought I might find you here," he said, not unkindly. Saying, "Goodbye, Sheriff, look at this." Sarah couldn't wait. She withdrew the pouch, showing him its contents. Nakohi was tracking the real killers, Blackwood's men. "This is Davis's hair and the wagon driver's watch." Jenkins examined the items with a frown. "Apache takes scalps in battle. This proves nothing except that Nakohi may have attacked Davis too. But Davis is alive and well. I saw him with Hargrove earlier." Sarah's mind raced. "Don't you see? This wasn't taken in a killing. It was taken as evidence during a fight. Nakohi must have encountered Davis doing something incriminating." The sheriff's frown deepened. "Even if that's true, no judge will accept Indian evidence-gathering methods. Not with Blackwood and Hargrove pushing for a hanging." "Then we need to find Davis," Sarah insisted. "Make him confess." Davis left town this afternoon. Convenient timing. Jenkins sighed. Sarah, I don't like this any more than you do, but my hands are tied. The execution order is signed. What about Judge Caldwell? He seemed fair-minded. He's staying at Blackwood's house tonight as an honored guest. Jenkins placed a sympathetic hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry, sometimes the territory deals harsh justice. After the sheriff left, Sarah remained with Escalating, desperate inspiration forming. The mare seemed to understand, standing patiently, as Sarah attached the pouch securely to the animal's bridle, hidden but accessible. Tomorrow, she whispered to the horse, you'll help me save him. Sarah spent the night sleepless, praying for guidance. At first light, she donned her best dress, the one she'd worn to church with Robert, and made her way to Gallows Hill, where a crowd already gathered. The structure stood stark against the dawn sky, noose swaying gently in the morning breeze. Nakohi emerged from the jailhouse flanked by guards, head unbowed. Though his wrists remained bound, he walked with the dignity of a man at peace with his fate. His eyes scanned the crowd until they found Sarah, standing as close to the gallows as permitted. Judge Caldwell read the formal condemnation, his voice carrying across the hushed gathering. When he finished, he asked, Has the condemned any last words? I die innocent, Nakohi stated clearly, but I die unafraid. My ancestors wait to welcome me. And your final request, Caldwell prompted, to see your horse? Yes, Nakohi confirmed, one last time. At the judge's nod, a militiaman led Escalating from the livery. The crowd parted as the mare approached the gallows steps. Sarah held, her breath silently willing the horse to remember what they had prepared. Escalating reached Nakohi, pressing her muzzle against his bound hands in a gesture that brought tears to even some hard-eyed settlers. Then, precisely as Sarah had hoped, the mare pawed at the ground, dislodging the hidden pouch, which fell at Nakohi's feet. What's this? Colonel Hargrove demanded, stepping forward. Before he could reach it, Judge Caldwell descended from the platform and retrieved the pouch himself. His expression changed as he examined its contents, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. This execution is temporarily stayed, he announced, raising his hand against the crowd's protests. New evidence requires consideration. A murmur rippled through the crowd as Judge Caldwell examined the contents of the pouch. Colonel Hargrove pushed forward, face flushed with anger. This is highly irregular, Your Honor. The execution order is signed. And I've just unsigned it, Caldwell replied calmly, pocketing the pouch. Sheriff, remove the prisoner from the gallows. We're reconvening in the town hall immediately. Morgan Blackwood shouldered through the crowd. Judge Caldwell, with all due respect, this appears to be a desperate ploy. That savage was fairly tried. Mr. Blackwood, Caldwell's voice carried the full weight of territorial authority. I'll thank you not to instruct me on matters of judicial procedure. This evidence warrants examination. The crowd's mood shifted dangerously, voices rising in protest. Several miners moved toward the gallows with clear intent. Sheriff Jenkins and his deputies drew their weapons. Anyone interfering with judicial process will be arrested, Jenkins announced. This isn't a lynching, it's a legal proceeding. As Nakohi was led down from the platform, Sarah rushed forward, only to be blocked by militiamen. Nakohi caught her eye, giving an almost imperceptible nod of gratitude. Inside the hastily reconvened court, Judge Caldwell placed the pouch and its contents on display. This evidence appears to implicate Davis, Mr. Blackwood's associate, in both murders attributed to the defendant. Indians collect scalps as trophies, Blackwood objected. This proves nothing except the savage's barbarism. Except, Caldwell countered, Mr. Davis is still very much alive, according to Sheriff Jenkins. Yet here is what appears to be his scalp lock. Curious. Hargrove stepped forward. Davis was attacked 3 weeks ago while patrolling. Reported an Apache brave matching Nakohi's description ambushed him, wounded him. He fought the brave off, but not before losing some hair in the struggle. And did Mr. Davis report this attack officially? Caldwell inquired. Military matter, Hargrove replied tersely. Handled internally. Sarah could remain silent no longer. Your Honor, the watch, in that pouch, belonged to Mr. Perkins, the wagon driver who was killed. I recognize it. He showed it to me the day before his death. It was a family heirloom. Hearsay, snapped the prosecutor. Judge Caldwell adjusted his spectacles. Mrs. Williams, are you suggesting the defendant collected these items as evidence, rather than trophies? Yes, Your Honor. Nakohi told the court he was tracking suspicious riders that night. He must have encountered Davis in the act or aftermath of the murder. Nakohi spoke for the first time since leaving the gallows. I followed militia tracks to wagon site, found dead driver, took watch as proof. Later, fought with white man placing. Apache arrows at scene, cut his hair in struggle, he escaped. Convenient story, Blackwood scoffed. Actually, came a new voice from the doorway. It's the truth. All heads turned to see a trail-worn man supporting himself on a crutch. Sheriff, Jenkins' deputy, Tom Wilson, who had been out of town investigating the wagon attack. Your Honor, Wilson said, limping forward, I've spent the past week tracking the real perpetrators of these murders. Found witnesses who saw Davis and two other men attacking the supply wagon. Davis has been staging these incidents under orders. Hargrove's hand moved to his sidearm. This is absurd. Where's your proof? Wilson tossed a leather-bound ledger onto the judge's table. Found this hidden in Davis's quarters. Details payments for security operations against Apache and obstacles to progress. As Judge Caldwell examined the ledger, his expression hardened. Inside were methodical entries documenting the planned murders, signed by both Davis and, more damningly, Colonel Hargrove himself. Colonel, Caldwell said quietly, it appears you have some explaining to do. The room erupted in chaos. Hargrove drew his pistol, grabbing Sarah as a shield. This proceeding is over, he growled, backing toward the door. The execution will continue as ordered. Blackwood looked genuinely shocked. Hargrove, what are you doing? What you paid me to do, Hargrove snarled. Secure these lands by any means necessary. Outside, shots rang out. Through the window, Sarah glimpsed militia men exchanging fire with figures on horseback, Apache warriors led by Taklishim, coming for Nakohi. In the momentary distraction, Nakohi, despite his bound hands, lunged at Hargrove with remarkable speed. His shoulder struck the colonel's midsection, sending them both crashing to the floor. Sarah broke free, scrambling away as Sheriff Jenkins drew down on the colonel. It's over, Hargrove, Jenkins declared, as deputies secured both the colonel and a stunned Blackwood. Judge, I believe we have sufficient evidence to release the prisoner and make some new arrests. Judge Caldwell nodded grimly. Indeed we do, Sheriff. Cut those ropes from Mr. Nakohi's wrists. He's a free man. Outside the town hall, Apache warriors and militia men faced off in tense standoff. Taklishim raised his hand, halting his warriors. As Nakohi emerged, unbound and flanked by Judge Caldwell and Sheriff Jenkins. Justice has been served, the judge announced to the gathering. This man is innocent of the charges against him. The real perpetrators are now in custody. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Confusion, anger, relief swirling like the dust devils that danced across the street. Sarah pushed through to Nakohi's side, propriety forgotten in the emotion of the moment. You're free, she said, voice trembling. Nakohi's stoic expression softened momentarily. Because of you, because you believed. Blackwood was led out in handcuffs, his carefully constructed authority crumbling before the town's eyes. This is a mistake, he blustered. I knew nothing of Hargrove's methods. I was misled. Nakohi's mare Ishkitini trotted to her masters. Sighed, nudging him affectionately. As he stroked her neck, Judge Caldwell approached. A remarkable animal, the judge observed, almost as if she understood what was needed. Apache horses are family, not possessions, Nakohi explained. They know our hearts. Caldwell nodded thoughtfully. Mr. Nakohi, I owe you a profound apology. On behalf of territorial justice, it seems we came perilously close to hanging an innocent man while the guilty walked free. The judge turned to address the townspeople who had gathered. Let this be a lesson in the dangers of hasty judgment and prejudice. I will be conducting a full investigation into Mr. Blackwood's business dealings and Colonel Hargrove's military actions in this territory. As the crowd dispersed, Taklishim approached. The tribal leader and Nakohi exchanged words in Apache before Taklishim addressed the judge. We have lived in these mountains since before your grandfathers were born, he said in careful English. We seek no war, only peace on our ancestral lands. The territorial government will need to formalize agreements, Caldwell replied. But I give you my word, your people's rights will be respected while I have authority here. Later that afternoon, an unexpected figure arrived in town. Davis himself, apparently returning from his convenient absence. He froze at the sight of Sheriff Jenkins waiting on the road. Davis, Jenkins called, hand on his holster. Just the man we've been looking for. Davis turned to flee, but found himself facing Nakohi and several Apache warriors who had materialized. Silently behind him, trapped, he surrendered without resistance. In the sheriff's office, Davis broke quickly under questioning, confirming what the ledger had suggested. Blackwood had orchestrated the entire scheme, the false attacks, the murders, the framing of the Apache, all to drive them from lands that contained rich copper deposits. Hargrove was already on Blackwood's payroll from previous dealings, Davis explained, desperate to save himself. They've been planning this for months. Create enough incidents to justify a military removal of the Apache. And the foreman, Jenkins pressed. Why kill your own man? Matthews discovered the plan, threatened to expose it, Davis admitted. Blackwood ordered him silenced. Hargrove provided the Apache knife, said he'd taken it from a brave he'd killed years ago. Sarah and Nakohi listened from the doorway. The full conspiracy finally laid bare. What will happen now? Sarah asked Judge Caldwell as they left the office. Justice, Mrs. Williams, Caldwell replied. Blackwood and Hargrove will stand trial for murder and conspiracy. The territorial governor will be informed of the attempted land theft and false military action. And the Apache? I've already drafted. In paperwork recognizing their rightful claim to the canyon lands. It's not perfect. Politics rarely is, but it's a start. As sunset painted the hills gold, Sarah and Nakohi stood on her porch, watching shadows lengthen across land that had nearly cost them everything. Your people are returning to the canyon, she asked, fighting an unexpected sense of loss. Yes, Nakohi confirmed, but paths that have crossed continue to run alongside each other. He hesitated, then added, if that is what you wish. Sarah looked up at him. The man who had taught her to survive, who had faced death with dignity, whose quiet strength had awakened something she thought had died with Robert. What I wish, she said carefully, is to never again haul water for miles when there's a perfectly good well right here. Her hand found his, fingers intertwining. And I wish for you to teach me more about the Apache way, if you're willing. Nakohi's rare smile transformed his face. The learning goes both ways, Sarah Williams. My people have much to learn from your courage. Dawn hadn't yet broken when urgent pounding at Sarah's door startled her awake. Sheriff Jenkins stood on her porch, expression grim. Blackwood's escaped, he announced without preamble. Overpowered the night deputy, stole horses and weapons. Sarah's blood ran cold. Where's Nakohi? That's why I'm here. Blackwood was raving about finishing what he started before he fled. Mentioned the Apache camp specifically. 15 minutes. Later, Sarah rode alongside Jenkins toward the Apache Canyon, Nakohi's tracking stone, a smooth river rock with unique markings he had given her, clutched in her hand. The stone was both practical tool and spiritual guide for Apache trackers. They found Nakohi already preparing a pursuit party with Taklishim and 4 warriors. His face registered surprise at Sarah's presence, but no objection. Blackwood took the mountain trail, Nakohi informed them. Heading toward our winter camp where elders and children stay. Jenkins shook his head. He can't possibly think he'll get away with attacking your people now that his conspiracy is exposed. A cornered wolf is most dangerous, Taklishim observed. He seeks revenge, not victory. I'm coming with you, Sarah declared, dismounting. Too dangerous, Jenkins protested. I know Blackwood, Sarah countered. I've dealt with him for years, and I know these lands almost as well as Nakohi now. Nakohi studied her with quiet assessment before nodding once. She comes. The pursuit party set out immediately, Nakohi leading with uncanny ability to read the landscape. What looked like random stones or broken twigs to others were clear signs to him: a horse passing recently, a man's weight, hurried movements. He has gathered others, Nakohi announced, examining disturbed earth at a creek crossing. 3, maybe 4 men. Miners from his camp, most likely. The tracking stone in Sarah's hand grew warm as she held it the way Nakohi had taught her, an Apache belief that the stone connected the tracker to the quarry's intentions. He's not running away, she realized. He's circling back toward something. Jenkins frowned. The mine? The town? The dam, Nakohi said suddenly. The water control for the entire valley. Understanding dawned on Sarah. If he destroys it, he could flood the lower canyon where your people are camped. The pursuit intensified, the party splitting into 2 groups. Nakohi, Sarah, and one warrior named Chano took the direct route over treacherous terrain, while Jenkins, Taklishim, and the others followed the longer trail that Blackwood's men would likely use. As Sarah scrambled up a near-vertical path behind, Nago, she marveled at how much she had changed. A year ago, she could barely haul water buckets. Now she tracked dangerous men through Apache lands, her body strong, her resolve unshakable. Nakohi paused at a high overlook, scanning the valley below with a spyglass taken from Hargrove's supplies. There, he pointed, Blackwood and his men, at the dam structure. The earthen dam had been built by early settlers to control spring flooding. Now Blackwood's men were placing what appeared to be mining explosives at its base. We cannot reach them in time, Chano observed grimly. I can, Nakohi replied, already moving toward a narrow deer trail that zigzagged down the cliff face. You, 2 circle around to warn any people downstream. No, Sarah caught his arm. Together, we do this together. Something passed between them, respect, understanding, and something deeper that needed no words. Nakohi nodded. Stay close, move as I move, silent as shadow. They descended with remarkable speed, using every bit of cover. When they reached the valley floor, they separated slightly, approaching the dam from different angles. Sarah's heart hammered as she crept through underbrush. Blackwood stood at the dam's edge, directing his men with angry gestures. The explosives were nearly in place. This will flush them out like rats, Blackwood was saying. Let's see how the judge rules when his precious Apache are scattered or drowned. Sarah caught Nakohi's eye across the clearing. He signaled her to stay hidden while he circled behind the miners. But as she shifted position, a dry branch snapped beneath her foot. Blackwood whirled, rifle raised. Who's there? Show yourself! Sarah froze, trapped. Before she could decide whether to run or surrender, a war cry shattered the air. Nakohi charged from the opposite direction, drawing the men's attention away from her position. Gunfire erupted as Blackwood's men spotted the Apache warrior. Sarah used the distraction to dash toward the unattended explosives, determination outweighing fear. Sarah reached the explosives as chaos erupted around her. Nakohi moved like lightning, his father's war lance, retrieved from his dwelling before the pursuit, spinning in his hands to deflect the miner's aim. 2 men fell back, one clutching a bleeding arm. Blackwood spotted Sarah and swung his rifle toward her. The Indian-loving widow should have known you'd be part of this. A shot rang out, splintering wood near Sarah's head. She ducked, hands frantically working to dismantle the explosive charges. Her fingers, once too delicate for frontier life, now moved with purpose despite their trembling. You don't understand what you're doing, she called to Blackwood. There are children in that camp, elders, innocent people. Savages, all of them, Blackwood spat. Obstacles to progress. This territory belongs to men with vision, not primitive relics. Nakohi engaged the remaining miners, his movements fluid and precise. Though outnumbered, his warrior training made him a formidable opponent. One miner fled outright, another fell unconscious from a precise strike. Blackwood, seeing his men defeated, abandoned his position and charged directly at Sarah, rage contorting his features. "I'll not be ruined by a woman and an Indian." Sarah braced herself, clutching a stone from the riverbed, her only weapon. But before Blackwood reached her, Nakohi's lance swept the man's legs from beneath him. Blackwood crashed down hard, his rifle skittering away across the rocks. Nakohi stood, over him, lance poised. "It is over, Blackwood. Your schemes end here." Blackwood's hand moved to his boot, drawing a hidden derringer. "Not while I breathe." The small pistol barked, the bullet grazing Nakohi's shoulder. Before he could fire again, an arrow struck the ground between them. Taklishim and the others had arrived, bows drawn and aimed. Sheriff Jenkins emerged from the tree line, his deputies covering the area. "Drop it, Blackwood! It's finished!" For a moment, it seemed Blackwood might choose death over surrender. Then, with a curse, he tossed the derringer aside. As Jenkins secured Blackwood, Sarah completed dismantling the explosive charges, her hands steadier now. Nakohi approached, blood seeping from his shoulder wound. "You're hurt," she said, tearing a strip from her petticoat to bind the injury. "A scratch," he replied, though he winced as she tightened the makeshift bandage. "You showed great courage." "I showed great fear," Sarah corrected, "but did what needed doing anyway." His rare smile appeared. "That is the true definition of courage." At the Apache winter camp, warning had spread thanks to Chano's swift riding. The threatened families were already evacuating to higher ground when Sarah, Nakohi, and the others arrived with news of Blackwood's capture. Relief transformed to celebration as the Apache realized the immediate danger had passed. Yet beneath the celebration ran currents of uncertainty. Blackwood was not the only threat to their way of life, merely the most immediate. That evening, the tribal council convened with Sarah, Jenkins, and Judge Caldwell, who had ridden out upon hearing of the confrontation, in attendance. The firelight cast long shadows as Taklishim spoke of the broader threats facing his people. "The dam shows our vulnerability," the elder observed. "Our sacred lands can be threatened not just by guns, but by the white man's knowledge of water and earth." Judge Caldwell nodded solemnly. "I cannot promise perfect justice or safety. The territory is changing, and powerful interests seek these lands." "Then we must change as well," Nakohi stated, "without losing who we are." He turned to Sarah. "Mrs. Williams has learned our ways of water finding and planting. We have learned her methods of negotiation and record-keeping. Together, we are stronger than alone." Sarah felt the weight of many eyes upon her, Apache elders, evaluating not just her words, but her spirit. "The future cannot be only Apache ways or only white ways," she said carefully. "Those who insist on only one path will be swept away like leaves in a flood. But those who can walk between worlds might build something new, something stronger." Natahane, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. The signs foretold this. A joining of rivers, different waters flowing together. Her aged fingers traced symbols in the dirt. Not the end of our people, but a new beginning. Nakohi's hand found Sarah's in the firelight. Though no words passed between them, their intertwined fingers spoke volumes about bridges between worlds and hearts finding common ground. Despite the odds, 2 weeks after Blackwood's capture, a military wagon transported him, Hargrove, and Davis to the territorial capital for trial. Judge Caldwell had gathered damning evidence against them, including testimony from miners coerced into participating. "In the scheme, they'll likely hang," Sheriff Jenkins told Sarah as they watched the prison wagon depart. "Conspiracy, multiple murders, attempted mass killing, not even Blackwood's money can buy his way free from that." Sarah felt no satisfaction, only relief that the immediate threat had passed. What about the mining claims? Voided by the territorial "Governor," Jenkins confirmed. "Judge Caldwell made sure of that. The land returns to Apache stewardship, though there's talk of a formal treaty to prevent future disputes." With Blackwood gone, Copper Springs existed in an uncertain equilibrium. Some residents still viewed the Apache with suspicion, but others, seeing how close they'd come to participating in grave injustice, adopted a more conciliatory approach. Reverend Taylor, who had remained conspicuously silent during Nakohi's trial, now preached moderation. "We are all God's children," his Sunday sermon proclaimed. "Red, white, or otherwise, we share this land under his watchful eye." Sarah attended that service, her first since Robert's death. Not for spiritual comfort, but to gauge the town's shifting sentiments. Several nodded to her respectfully, a far cry from the ostracism she'd faced weeks earlier. Afterward, Mrs. Peterson, the general store owner's wife, approached hesitantly. "My Thomas feels terrible about sitting on that jury. Says he got caught up in Blackwood's talk and didn't think for himself." She paused. "We'd welcome your vegetables at the store now, if you're still willing to sell them." Small steps, Sarah thought. Small steps toward understanding. At her homestead, transformation continued. The well Nakohi had helped dig now supplied not only her needs, but served as a watering stop for Apache traveling between seasonal camps. Her once struggling farm flourished with integrated techniques. Apache water conservation combined with her knowledge of crop rotation. Nakohi visited daily, sometimes staying until stars blanketed the night sky. Together, they built a larger garden, reinforced outbuildings, and expanded irrigation channels. Their easy partnership drew curious glances from both communities, but neither paid much heed to gossip anymore. One evening, as they sat on Sarah's porch watching fireflies dance across the twilight fields, Nakohi broke their comfortable silence. "The council has named me Peace Chief," he said, "to speak with white authorities about our people's future." Sarah turned to him, surprised and pleased. "They couldn't choose better. It means walking between worlds," he continued, "understanding white ways without losing Apache heart." His dark eyes found hers. "I would like you to help me." The request held layers of meaning beyond the simple words. Sarah felt the weight of it, not just assistance with translation or cultural guidance, but partnership in a deeper sense. "I would be honored," she replied softly. The following day, Nakohi arrived with Taklishim, Natahane, and several tribal elders. They carried a ceremonial pipe, a sacred object rarely seen by outsiders. "We wish to smoke the peace pipe here," Taklishim explained, "where Apache and settler land meets, to mark new beginning." Sarah welcomed them, hastily preparing food and drink for the unexpected council. As the men arranged themselves in her yard, Natahane drew Sarah aside. "This ceremony," the old healer explained, "is not just for peace. Between peoples, it is recognition of you as friend of Apache, as one who may join our circle." The pipe ceremony proceeded with solemn dignity. Prayers were offered to the four directions, smoke carrying words skyward to Creator. When the pipe reached Sarah, she followed the rituals Nakohi had carefully instructed her on, earning approving nods from the elders. Afterward, Taklishim presented Sarah with a beautifully crafted water vessel. "No more hauling water," he said, with rare humor. "This vessel carries stories of our people. Now it carries your story too." As the council departed, Nakohi lingered. In the golden light of sunset, he seemed both warrior and diplomat, straddling old ways and new realities. "Tomorrow," he said, "I go to territorial office with Judge Caldwell, beginning of long talks." He took her hand, an increasingly familiar gesture. "But I return to you. Always, I return to you." Sarah's heart quickened at the promise in his words. "And I'll be here," she replied, no longer hauling water but building something new. As autumn painted the hills in russet and gold, Sarah found herself spending more time in the Apache camp than at her own homestead. With Nakohi frequently traveling to meet territorial officials, she had taken on the role of informal liaison between the tribe and townsfolk, "You've changed," Sheriff Jenkins observed one afternoon as they rode the boundary between settlement lands and Apache territory, marking agreed-upon borders with cairns. "Not just your appearance." Sarah touched the eagle feather now woven into her braid, conscious of her transformed attire, a practical blend of settler clothing and Apache garments better suited to desert life. "Everything changes," she replied. "Land, people, hearts." Jenkins smiled knowingly. "Speaking of hearts, folks are talking about you and Nakohi." "Folks always talk," Sarah said, but without the defensiveness that once would have accompanied such words. "It's not all bad talk anymore," Jenkins assured her. "Some still cluck their tongues, but others see something hopeful in it. A path forward, maybe." That evening, Sarah joined Nakohi in gathering healing plants from the hills above the camp. The old woman had been teaching her traditional medicine, knowledge normally reserved for Apache women of certain lineage. Such inclusion represented extraordinary trust. These leaves, Nakohi demonstrated, harvesting from a scrubby bush, for fever. These roots for stomach pain. All medicine has spirit, must gather with good heart. As they worked, Nakohi spoke of her vision for Sarah. "You carry two worlds inside you now. Not Apache, not completely white woman anymore. Something new. Is that possible?" Sarah asked. "To be neither one thing nor another?" "The hawk flies between earth and sky," Nakohi replied. "Not bird of ground, not creature of heavens, but both. Strong because it knows many worlds." Later, as the women returned to camp, they found an unusual gathering. Nakohi had returned from his diplomatic mission with Judge Caldwell and several territorial officials. But most surprising was the presence of Reverend Taylor and a small delegation from Copper Springs. "Sarah," Nakohi greeted her, his formal demeanor softening. "We bring news, good news." Judge Caldwell stepped forward. "The territorial governor has approved our proposed settlement. The Apache will retain rights to their ancestral lands, including the sacred mountains. In exchange, they agree to allow regulated passage along established trails and limited water usage for the town." Taklishim nodded solemnly. "We accept these terms. Better to bend like willow than break like oak. Additionally," Caldwell continued, "Mrs. Williams' homestead is officially recognized as neutral ground, a place where both communities can meet in peace." Sarah blinked in surprise. "My land." Reverend Taylor cleared his throat. "It was my suggestion, Mrs. Williams. You've built bridges we didn't think possible. We'd like your homestead to serve as a trading post and meeting place." The implications were enormous. Such a designation would protect her land from future Blackwoods, while providing sustainable livelihood and purpose. "I would be honored," she said, meeting Nakohi's eyes across the circle. His subtle nod conveyed volumes of unspoken support. That night, after the officials departed, the Apache held a healing ceremony. Wounds, both physical and spiritual, needed tending after the conflict. Drums pulsed like heartbeats as dancers moved around the central fire, their shadows stretching toward the star-filled sky. Sarah sat with Nakohi, absorbing the rhythms and songs. The silver locket containing Robert's portrait still hung around. Her neck, not forgotten, but no longer the anchor it once was. Nakohi joined them after completing his ceremonial duties. "The tribe wishes to honor you," he said to Sarah, "for saving our people from false justice and Blackwood's flood." Before she could respond, Nakohi produced a carefully folded blanket, a wedding blanket, Sarah realized with sudden clarity. The intricate design told stories of water, mountains, and the joining of different paths. "This is traditionally given to Apache brides," Nakohi explained, his usually steady voice carrying an undercurrent of tension. "But Nakohi has modified the pattern to include symbols from your world as well." Sarah's fingers traced the beautiful weaving, understanding its significance. "It's magnificent." "It is also a question," Nakohi said quietly. "One I have been afraid to ask." Sarah looked up from the blanket to find his dark eyes watching her intently. The camp seemed to fade away, leaving only this moment suspended between heartbeats. "Ask," she whispered. "Two rivers joining become stronger," he said. "Would you join your path with mine, according to Apache ways and yours? Become my wife, bridge between our worlds?" Sarah's hand moved from the blanket to her silver locket. With deliberate motion, she removed it for the first time since Robert's death, gently placing it in her pocket, not discarded, but no longer defining her future. "Yes," she answered simply. "Our paths already joined long ago. Now our hearts should follow." Preparation for the wedding encompassed traditions from both worlds, creating something entirely new. Sarah spent 4 days in a purification lodge with Natahane and other Apache women, learning ceremonies previously unknown to outsider eyes. Meanwhile, Nakohi underwent his own rituals with the tribal warriors, proving his worthiness as a husband and provider. Sarah wrote to her sister in Pennsylvania, explaining her decision. "I am not abandoning our ways," she penned by lamplight, "but embracing a larger understanding of family and community. Robert would have wanted me to find happiness again." Word of the unprecedented union spread throughout the territory. Some reacted with predictable disapproval. The Copper Springs newspaper published a scathing editorial about degradation of racial boundaries, but others recognized the symbolic importance of such a joining. Judge Caldwell himself would attend, lending legitimacy to the ceremony. "This union represents the very future of the territory," he told a gathering of concerned officials. "Cooperation rather than conflict. We would be fools to oppose it." On the morning of the ceremony, Sarah found a package outside her cabin door, a handmade dress from the women of Copper Springs, led by Mrs. Peterson. The note attached read simply, "Every bride deserves something new." The dress combined settler styling with subtle Apache beadwork, another bridge between worlds. Sarah donned it with Mrs. Peterson's help, her throat tight with emotion. "I never thought I'd see the day," the older woman admitted as she arranged Sarah's hair. "My Thomas always said Indians and whites couldn't mix. But seeing you and Nakohi, the way you look at each other, well, maybe love doesn't care about such things." The ceremony took place at the boundary stone where Apache lands met Sarah's homestead, physically and symbolically the joining of territories. Apache drums accompanied Sarah as she walked toward Nakohi, who wore traditional warrior garments with quiet dignity. Taklishim conducted the Apache portion of the ceremony, speaking of joined paths and shared burdens. Nakohi and Sarah exchanged items symbolizing commitment. She gave him a book of Shakespeare's sonnets she had taught him to read. He presented her with a meticulously crafted amulet representing two-spirit harmony. "This amulet," he explained for the benefit of the settler guests, "honors those who carry multiple spirits within one body, neither fully one thing nor another, but stronger for containing multitudes." Reverend Taylor, initially reluctant, but ultimately persuaded by his wife's insistence, performed a modified Christian blessing. "Love knows no boundaries," he proclaimed, though his discomfort remained evident in his stiff posture. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Judge Caldwell then stepped forward with official documents. "By the authority vested in me by the territorial government, I recognize this union as legally binding." He signed the marriage certificate with flourish. "Let it be recorded that on this day, Sarah Williams became Sarah Williams Nakohi, joining two traditions in lasting peace." The celebration that followed blended Apache and settler customs. Traditional dancing accompanied frontier fiddle music. Apache cuisine shared table space with settler dishes. Children from both communities played together, unencumbered by the prejudices of their elders. As evening approached, an unexpected visitor arrived, a territorial courier bearing official dispatches. Judge Caldwell read them with growing satisfaction. Before addressing the gathering, I've just received word that Morgan Blackwood has been found guilty of conspiracy and murder. He and Colonel Hargrove will hang next month." He paused as murmurs spread through the crowd. Additionally, the governor has officially recognized Nakohi as the Apache representative to territorial councils with full diplomatic status. The announcement brought cheers from both Apache and settlers who recognized the significance of such recognition. No longer would the tribe be without voice in decisions affecting their future. As the celebration continued around them, Sarah and Nakohi slipped away to a quiet spot overlooking the valley. The setting sun painted the landscape in breathtaking hues of orange and purple. 2 years ago, Sarah reflected, I was hauling water alone, watching my dreams die with each passing day. Nakohi's arm encircled her waist. And now I understand what Natahane meant about joining rivers. We are stronger together than either could be alone. Nakohi touched the two-spirit amulet now hanging around Sarah's neck. This path will not be easy. Many still fear what they do not understand. When has anything worthwhile ever been easy? Sarah replied, leaning into his strength. We've survived false accusations, prejudice, and attempted murder. We can survive being different. As darkness fell, they returned to the celebration hand. In hand, no longer Apache warrior and settler widow, but something new, pioneers of a different kind of frontier. 1 year after their wedding, Sarah's homestead had transformed beyond recognition. No longer a struggling widow's desperate holding, it now served as the vibrant heart of a unique community. The newly completed trading post, built with Apache, labor and settler materials, stood at the property's edge, a physical manifestation of their bridged worlds. Another supply wagon arrived from the territorial capital, Sarah informed Nakohi as he returned from a hunting expedition with younger Apache men. The school books we requested finally came. Nakohi nodded with satisfaction. The small schoolhouse they'd established served children from both communities, teaching in English and Apache. Natahane and Sarah alternated lessons, offering knowledge from both cultures. And this came for you, Sarah added, handing him an official-looking document. From Judge Caldwell. Nakohi broke the seal and read carefully, his English reading skills now nearly matching Sarah's. The territorial governor has approved our water management plan, he announced. We can begin the irrigation project next month. The plan, Nakohi's vision combined with Sarah's practical organization, would bring controlled water to both Apache fields and settler farms, ending the perpetual struggle that had defined Sarah's early days in the territory. No woman would haul water for miles again. Sarah placed a hand on her swelling belly, now 6 months round with their child. Good timing. I'd like everything settled before the baby arrives. Nakohi's usually stoic expression softened as he covered her hand with his own. Our child will know both waters, Apache strength and settler knowledge. The pregnancy had caused a stir in both communities. Some settler women now avoided Sarah, whispering about half-breed babies. Conversely, certain traditional Apache elders worried about diluting their bloodlines. But most had come to accept, if not fully embrace, the union and its fruit. Sheriff Jenkins rode up later that afternoon as Sarah and Nakohi inspected the trading post's nearly finished storeroom. Territorial news, he announced, dismounting. Railroads coming through, not directly here, but close enough, 15 miles east. The implications were enormous. The railroad would bring more settlers, more commerce, more change. Governors, sending officials next month to survey, Jenkins continued. They'll want to meet with you both, especially you, Nakohi, as the recognized Apache representative. After the sheriff departed, Sarah and Nakohi walked to the hilltop overlooking their land. The well they had dug together, Sarah's first deliverance from water hauling, now supplied not just their household, but served travelers and neighbors alike. The railroad changes everything, Sarah observed. More people will come. They always come. Nakohi replied without bitterness. But now we have voice, treaty, rights on paper. We bend like willow, not break like oak. That evening, as they shared dinner with Natahane and Taklishim, conversation turned to the future. The old healer placed herbs in Sarah's tea to strengthen the growing child while offering wisdom about the changes ahead. "I have seen such things in my dreams," Natahan said, her weathered hands moving in expressive gestures. "Iron horse bringing many. Our people must learn new ways while keeping old heart." "The trading post will help," Sarah suggested. "It gives your people direct access to trade without exploitation." Taklishim, now showing his years but still commanding respect, nodded thoughtfully. "This partnership you have built shows a different path than fighting. Not all will follow, but some will see wisdom in it." Later that night, as moonlight silvered the landscape, Sarah and Nakohi sat on their porch, expanded now to incorporate both Apache and settler design elements. The home itself had grown, with a new room awaiting their child. "Sometimes," Sarah confessed, "I worry about our baby. Not everyone will accept a child of two worlds." Nakohi considered this truth without flinching. "Our child will face challenges we cannot prevent, but will have strength from both bloodlines, wisdom from both peoples. And love," Sarah added. "Above all, love." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by night sounds and the distant singing from the Apache camp where young people gathered around evening fires. "I have something for you," Nakohi said finally, presenting a small carved wooden box. Inside lay a silver brooch, fashioned from melted-down coins. A water bird in flight, its wings outstretched toward the horizon. "To remember," he explained, "how far you have come from woman who hold water, how much you have changed our world." Sarah touched the gift reverently, recognizing the craftsmanship of Nakohi's own hands. "From water carrier to bridge builder," she mused. "Not the life I expected when I came west with Robert." "The Great Spirit has mysterious paths for us," Nakohi replied. "Sometimes the hardest trail leads to the best view." 3 months later, as spring breathed new life into the desert, Sarah gave birth to a daughter. The labor was long, but ultimately successful, with Natahan's experienced hands guiding the child into the world, while Nakohi waited anxiously outside, according to Apache custom. "She has strong lungs," Natahani announced, as the infant's powerful cry filled the cabin. When Nakohi was finally permitted to enter, he approached the bed with reverence. Sarah, exhausted but radiant, held their daughter wrapped in the wedding blanket that had symbolized their union. "She is perfect," he whispered, touching the child's copper-toned skin and wisp of dark hair with gentle fingers. "Like sunrise after long night." They named her Amara Tala Williams Nakohi, Amara from Sarah's grandmother, Tala meaning wolf in Apache, a name bridging worlds, just as she herself would. Word of the birth spread quickly. Despite lingering prejudices, gifts arrived from both communities: a silver rattle from Sheriff Jenkins, handmade baby clothes from Mrs. Peterson, a protective amulet from Taklishim, a cradle board beautifully carved by Apache craftsmen. Judge Caldwell himself rode out to see the child, bringing official documents recognizing her dual heritage and rights under territorial law, papers he had fought to create specifically for this circumstance. "She represents the future I hope for this territory," the judge said, watching the infant sleep peacefully in her cradleboard. "Not erasing differences, but finding strength in them." Summer brought the promised railroad surveyors and government officials. Meetings were held at Sarah and Nakohi's trading post, with Nakohi representing Apache interests with dignified authority. The officials, initially skeptical of an Apache spokesman married to a white woman, soon recognized his intelligence and diplomatic skill. "We've secured guarantees," Nakohi informed the tribal council afterward. "The railroad will not cross sacred lands. Apache workers will be hired at fair wages if they choose to work. Our water rights remain protected. Not perfect, but better terms than most tribes received, a testament to Nakohi's effectiveness and the respect he had earned. As autumn painted the hills in familiar gold, Sarah stood at the well she and Nakohi had dug together years earlier. Amara slept against her chest in the cradle board, which Sarah had grown adept at using, despite initial awkwardness. The trading post bustled with activity, Apache bringing crafts and herbs to trade, settlers purchasing supplies, and occasionally lingering to learn Apache techniques for desert survival. Sarah thought about the woman she had been, desperately hauling water, grieving, alone. The journey from that desperate widow to who she was now seemed both impossible and inevitable. Nakohi joined her, returning from a meeting with railroad representatives. "They have agreed to our terms for the water station," he reported. "It will be built on neutral ground, serving both communities." Sarah smiled. "Remember when I could barely haul enough water for myself? Now we're negotiating water access for the entire valley." "You were strong even then," Nakohi replied. "You just needed to find your true path." As twilight settled over the land, they gathered with friends from both communities for a harvest celebration. Sheriff Jenkins, now gray-haired but still sharp-eyed, played harmonica while young Apache men drummed. Children, settler and Apache alike, chased fireflies in the gathering darkness. Natahane, her ancient face a map of wisdom, held baby Amara, singing traditional lullabies. "This child," she pronounced to all who would listen, "carries medicine for our peoples. Not Apache medicine, not white medicine, but something new, something healing." Sarah watched as Nakohi joined a traditional dance, his movements fluid and proud. No longer just a warrior, now a diplomat, husband, father, roles he filled with the same quiet dignity that had first drawn her to him. Later, as stars blanketed the night sky, Sarah and Nakohi stood on their porch, Amara sleeping peacefully between them. The silver brooch, the water bird in flight, gleamed at Sarah's collar, catching moonlight. "We have come far," Nakohi observed, "from the day they nearly hanged me." "From the day I collapsed hauling water," Sarah added with a smile. Their hands found each other in the darkness, fingers intertwining, just as their lives had intertwined, creating something neither could have imagined alone. The future held challenges, certainly, but also promise. Not just for them, but for the two communities now tentatively learning to coexist. And it had all begun with a struggling woman hauling water, and the Apache who made her his wife.